We are activating your unique self-discovery one show at a time. The Orchard of Wisdom Self-Discovery podcast are at your fingertips, just waiting to inspire and invite you in discovering just how awesome you really are and how to navigate through life in joy, enrichment, personal abundance, in mind, body, spirit, heart, and soul. All the people we bring you are here to serve you on your journey of life. Do enjoy our next show. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Ignite Your Heart and Soul, right here in selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest today is Diane Pienta. And you can see behind, she has this wonderful book called Magic. What are we going to be talking about today? Be the magic. I always say if you want love, you've got to be the love. You want peace, you've got to be the peace. So why shouldn't you be the magic as well? She's a creative mentor, healer, forest therapy guide, and author. A former businesswoman, she was sparked by cancer diagnosis to transform her life and explore alternative healing, herbalism, yoga, meditation, which led to a new career in non-traditional ways of finding joy, inner peace, and creativity. She's the author of Be the Magic, the bite-sized nuggets of wisdom to feed your joy, nourish your soul, and open your heart. 8 ways to finding happiness by finding your strength. And she's speaking about single but profound lessons in happiness. And if you want to be happy, you've got to find that happy strength. The big idea is where the 8 powerful but surprising ways to find happiness, especially in the middle of tough times, instead of digging in or turning away, finding goodness in creativity and connection. And why it matters? Well, it may seem counterintuitive to step away from challenges and adversely to do the art project or take a walk, but reinforcing on beauty and creativity when the chips are down is a powerful way to undo fear and worry. And the keynotes that she's going to talk about today, well, you're just going to have to listen because wisdom comes when you listen, learn, and then apply. Welcome to the show, Han.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thanks for having me to this beautiful show. I really appreciate it.
My appreciate, it's a reoccurring, beautiful theme, which I absolutely love. Somebody gets a nudge, nudge, wink, wink, or cosmic 2x4, which changes the direction of their life. And it's through the discovery of strength and courage and abilities and skills and purpose, through the adversity, through what happens to you, but you make it happen for you. And I love it when people do that because that's really when the true essence of a person is born.
I think that's so true. And what you're saying, the wound, the crack is where the light comes in.
Yes.
And so many times in our lives when we're experiencing those challenging circumstances and we just wish they were different, but kind of engaging with them and interacting in a different way, maybe of saying, well, why is this happening? Like what's the lesson? Or I love the saying, rejection is just a barrier in the road to directing you to the true path. And so just reframing our world and our experiences changes everything.
Even if it's negative, there's always a reason for something happening to you. And
Yeah,
always.
yeah. And it's funny. This book, they say that writers write what they need to hear, and this book is no different. It's been teaching me from day one. And I actually kind of avoided writing this book for about 2 years. And I think I was scared, I was scared about putting it out in the world and what does that mean? And I was distracting myself with a lot of different things. And I was on the phone with a friend and I said, I think I need to have my plane grounded so I can write this book. And well, 6 minutes later, my ankle was broken. I've never broken anything in my life. And, I mean, the irony was not lost on me in the moment. And then, in 2 days, I was kind of in this, oh, what was me kind of thing. And, in the human perspective of like, I've got this broken ankle. But then like going to the spiritual perspective of, wait a minute, the perfection of this is really great. And it's not only did it clear my schedule to write the book, but it also, I'd having kind of slouchy posture for a long time. And even though I did a lot of yoga and I worked on it, having the broken ankle, and posture is important because
Yes.
where your body goes, your mind follows. And so that really is such another way to access our power. And the broken ankle because of the way I had to walk, it just kind of realigned my spine. And I thought this would have taken me 20 more years of yoga. So like what becomes, this tragic event becomes this kind of little miracle gift. And so, and the book has done that time and time again as I've
Yeah.
been writing it.
Well, it is the universal's way of saying, you just stop. You're on the wrong trajectory. There's a redirect for you. And if you're not paying attention to the signs, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, tap, tap, along comes the cosmic 2x4. Do you hear me now?
Right.
And, sometimes we kind of need that because on the human side of things, we will make excuses, right? We will avoid,
Right.
but avoidance is futile, right? Because eventually
Exactly.
it's going to catch up with you and you are going to have to deal with it. And the faster we deal with something, the quicker we actually either go through it or discover what it really means. But sometimes
Right.
you have to wait for those events to happen because they are that wonderful, here's the crossroads in life. You pause long enough to kind of think about where you want to go, to instinctually feel where you need to go, rather than being in a hurry and just putting your foot on the pedal.
You're so right. And as you're speaking, what's also coming to mind is compassion, and
Mm.
going through the experience has kind of opened my heart even more to people who are going through similar
Yes.
experiences. And if you don't have that, there's an experiential quality to that of like, oh, I really get your pain. I
Yeah.
really get how that is for you. So, and I think it also
More compassion for yourself
for
as well.
self, exactly, right? It's kind
Yeah.
of like if you don't have self-compassion, it gets tougher and tougher until you finally say, okay, I've got to be good to myself. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
it
I've got to
reminds
follow my
me.
soul path. Yeah.
Yeah. I had an epidural with all of my pregnancy, and there was one of them when they were taking the legs off the stirrups and they dropped my legs. And you're not meant to feel anything, but what I felt was just lumps of weight. And suddenly I understood people who were paralyzed. And that you think that, oh, they're not feeling anything from the waist down. That's okay. No, they're carrying a heavy weight
Mm,
that they cannot maneuver without physically picking up and doing things like this. And it's a constant heavy weight. And
yes.
it becomes a burden. And it just in that split moment of them dropping my legs, that kind of, and it's
Yeah.
funny what comes across your mind when you're doing something else, but suddenly an understanding of what people who are in wheelchairs that have become paralyzed from the waist down, are feeling. And I
Yeah.
think that we don't always relate until something happens to us. I broke my ankle as well. I used to wear high heels all the time. Couldn't wear them anymore. And I thought, okay,
Right.
that was rather extravagant to break my ankle in 3 places just to get me out of high heels.
I get it. And it's that diversity of experience too. And we don't always want the negative experience. No, I mean, who really wants the
No.
negative experience? But there is this richness of life when you have that diversity of experience. I'm all about that exploration and okay, it doesn't
Mm.
work, or God, that didn't feel good, or why did I do that? But as long as we're learning from it, there's just a richness there that exists.
There's a lot that, I read in your intro that of joy and happiness. And people, I can't find the joy. I can't find the happiness. Well, the joy and the happiness actually comes in the lesson, in the learning, in the discovering, in the wondrous of what else is out there. When we stop engaging ourselves in life and being wondrous, we actually stop seeing the joy and the happiness.
Yeah. Yeah, and curiosity is key.
Mm.
And play, I'm all about play. I think as adults we get so focused and we lose sight of the play, or we
And we're
think
so
play is
grown up.
frivolous. Yeah, you're right. It's play. But I've learned time and time again that play is actually the access into creativity, to
Mm.
new ideas, to new solutions. And it's just fun. Like we're here to have fun. We're not here to like suffer as much as possible. But that access of play into our joy, especially I think if you're stuck, it's a great access in to say, what's even like catching my curiosity or my
Mm.
interest at this moment? And maybe, I give the example that I heard of somebody who was teaching pine needle basket making. And I thought, oh, that's a fun 2 hour afternoon. And so I went, well, 8 years later, I'm still like, I'm mesmerized by
Yeah.
these pine needle baskets. And so, I mean, that's a small little thing, but I know when I'm weaving them and making them, my mind is still, it's peaceful, it's happy. And generally, after, 20 minutes of doing that, I just have, maybe I get a different instinct, I get an impulse to do something different than if I was simply just sitting at my computer slogging it out.
Or sitting
So,
just meditation doing nothing, because that is a
yeah,
form of meditation. It's being at
exactly.
one with something, being immersed in it. And while the mind is immersed in it, the psyche is free to be and
Yeah,
download. But so busy, we're so busy out there that the psyche is, hello, hello, I'm trying to get
yeah,
your attention. So when we go in and can just be present with self by doing something, then that is when the psyche can download, and then it's revealed in those quiet moments.
yeah. And I love what you just said about, or just sitting in meditation. And
Hmm.
that is, and I definitely sit in meditation. I know a lot of people do. It's powerful. But this idea of working with our hands, like we're
Hmm.
meant to make things. All of our ancestors worked with their hands all day. Like they made everything. It's in our bones. I think it's
Yeah.
primal for us to want to do that. And we're very lucky, this modern world. I don't know if we're lucky or unlucky, but this modern world gives us everything
Hmm.
that's already pre-made. And we've lost the like ability to even know how to make things.
Yes.
Or we see something handmade and we think, oh, how is that made? And I know my grandmother 100 years ago would have said, well, you sit down and like, here's how you make a rag rug, or like, of course, it's like, it's like cooking a dinner, it's no
Yeah.
different than that.
Right.
And so I think it also speaks to something really primal and almost ancestral in us. It's like we're nature, we're meant to make things. So I love that you're presencing that as a form of meditation too.
Hmm.
It's yeah.
I mean, I've got the side of my business where I'm creating the banners and I'm creating the posts and I'm doing uploading and I'm creating the videos and all of that. And sometimes we could look at it as being mundane, but
Mm,
because there's an aspect of it that's automatic and there's an
mhm.
aspect of it that is creative, I
Yeah,
do find it quite meditative,
yeah,
right? So,
yeah,
and it
yeah,
allows the creativity to kind of come out because you're in a creative mode, but which is more of the mundane creativity rather than the epiphany. But the
yeah.
epiphany can come from that.
Yeah, and I bet, and I'm curious, I suspect, and I wonder if this is true for you, that when you're doing that, are you in a state of flow? Like,
Hmm.
is everything else kind of not mattering? I know when I get into that state, it doesn't matter if there's, 10 diesel trucks driving right by
Yes.
me. I don't even, and I'm very sensitive to noise, but I don't even recognize that. So
Yeah. The only time I
yeah.
get frustrated is when the computer or program decides not to work.
Right,
And that
right.
takes you out of your flow. But it's I drive to my daughter's every second week. She's about to have a second baby, and my oldest
Ah,
grandson turned 2 yesterday. So yeah, I
congratulations.
know it's all very exciting. So I drive down there every other week to look after the baby, and it's a beautiful drive for the first part. It's going over the Malahach and it's over the mountains, and you see the lake and the ocean surrounded by trees, and it is. I love that time period because my mind is driving. It's concentrating on the road. It's doing its thing, but then the rest of me can just go wherever it wants to go. And
Yeah,
I love that because
right.
that's my space time.
Right, right. And I bet you're in your third eye. I know when
Yeah.
I'm on long drives, not necessarily city driving, but like long meditative
Yes.
drives, I'm very tuned into my third eye
Yeah.
too. And, even doing some chanting or something with it.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
pretty, yeah,
Now, I mean, and this is the thing is, if I couldn't sit cross-legged and meditate, you need a crane to get me back up. I just have those kind of legs, but it is finding what is it out there that even if you are busy doing something with your hands, that your mind is at peace,
yeah,
that space, because I think a lot of the people never find the joy of the happiness or the magic of life because they're too engaged in what's wrong or what the burden is, and they don't allow themselves to be present with the gift of now, with the
yeah.
beauty of now. And when you're with the beauty of now, your lens changes in what you see around you.
Right. And, it's when you were speaking, I was just thinking of how, a large part of my book is a number of vignettes that gives you different practices that interrupts that negative thinking. And there's so many different ways to do that. I mean, even simply just singing
Yes.
activates our vagus nerve. It calms us down. It puts us into a different, calmer state. So all these different little practices that can just take us back into ourselves, really. And yeah, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I sing to my grandson, but we also do silly billies, and
Yeah, yeah.
and all of these things. And he watches me has my tongue working, and he's got into blowing raspberry, but you need to get a shower when he does it,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
we're silly billy. And when my
Yeah.
kids were driving me crazy and not listening, I used to step into opera, and they'd do anything to shut me up. So
One of the vignettes I write is that how when my husband and I were first married, we would sing our words. It would be like, pass the butter, we would
yes,
do these different accents,
yeah,
and and it was just goofy and
fun.
silly.
You're
And we
right.
laughed a lot. And I think, and I realized afterwards it was we were activating our vagus nerve as much
Yes.
as we were enjoying the honeymoon period, and so even now, sometimes when we're in a little bit of a it's, I'll just say, all right, we're singing everything, today. And sometimes we're doing opera, sometimes we're doing a country song, but whatever we're saying, what do you do, we're making a song out of, what are you doing today? And it sounds so goofy,
Yes.
but it shifts. And I think anything that helps us shift and to get out of the sense that it's goofy, or that's silly, any
Embarrassing. Yeah,
embarrassing,
yeah.
yeah, like let's learn how to play again.
And I think this is the thing, if you're worried about embarrassment, I'm very good at embarrassing myself with things that I say or do, it just happens naturally. My kids have a really good laugh at it. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm sharing the laughter. But if we're worried about what other people are going to think, we're always going to be prisoners of that. And I have been at some point. Am I making my mother always was, are you making a fool of yourself? Which was her generation. You had to be very,
Yeah.
very uptight. And you couldn't enjoy life because if you did, then you were making a fool out of yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
would be constantly making a fool out of myself because it was fun, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then the honing in and don't embarrass yourself or don't embarrass the person you're with. And I think yeah, I mean, we're not asking people to be idiots, or do something completely idiotic or really kind of, take your breeches down and moon somebody in the middle or something. And it's not what we're asking for. But
Mm-hmm.
we really do need to lighten up, don't we?
Yeah. And again, I keep coming back to this concept of play. And one of the I love I was at a sound healing one time, and there was a Peruvian sound healer there, and he said, what did you naturally do when you were 4 or 5 or 6 years old?
Mm,
And he had been in business and in finance, and he was in his mid-40s, and he realized that when he was 4 or 5, or up until 6 or 7, he played the flute, and I mean, he was inseparable from his flute, and
mm,
everyone loved it.
hmm.
And so, as he came back to himself, he thought, well, what do I love to do? And he started playing his flute. He started doing amazing sound healings. And so I think one of the axes is in to say, well, what did we actually love to
Yeah.
do when we were little? Like, I realized that I used to love to write. I would write letters to people. I would get a
Mm,
piece of paper. I would watch the Today Show with my mother, and I would write a letter to the host. This is what I enjoyed about your, it's 5,
excellent.
yeah. Or I would like climb trees, and a forest therapy guide now.
Mhm.
So sometimes it takes us a while, and the journey can be so circuitous. It's not a linear journey,
Mm,
and there's such beauty in that too, because even though for me I swayed away from, it's that I didn't immediately pursue a creative and forest therapy and artist and
hmm.
writer's path. um, I pursued a business path because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. That was
Yes.
like,
They're
that was
supposed
the
to.
training, that was
Yes.
the conditioning,
Yes.
and so, but those skills serve me extremely well right now. And
Mm,
so, I would also say to somebody, if they're stuck maybe in a position they're not really loving, like, what is it? just really, you're in that position for a reason.
Yeah.
You might not know it now. Just learn everything you can, learn and love. And when the next step comes, you're ready. And so, and then you step into it and it will come, especially if you're calling it. So, it's all
Well, it's the university of
interconnected.
experience, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right. No,
exactly.
in your university, you're gathering knowledge, but what you're in the university of life, you're gathering experience. But when you find that thing that becomes the passion, the
Mm-hmm.
heart and soul calling, I have to go down this path, you don't lose the experience. You
Exactly.
transform that experience into supporting what it is the passion is.
Yeah. And I think, that what I found in myself and in other people is that your soul starts to knock. And if you
Mm,
don't, and sometimes you're not even sure, I'm not even sure what you're saying. Soul,
yeah.
like, what are you saying? For me, it was writing. And
Mm.
I was avoiding. And eventually I stopped sleeping. And I'm an ace sleeper. I could sleep anywhere. But I started waking up at 2:30 and 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, and I still wasn't really making the connection. And then I was reading Garrison Keillor's memoir, and he talked about how he was in a deep depression and couldn't sleep. And the only thing that would keep the sleeplessness at bay was writing. And
Mm.
that's when he always kind of poo-pooed New York Times bestsellers, but then all of a sudden he had the New York Times #1 bestseller. But he said it was the only thing that would, and I found too, once I actually started writing and getting into that flow state that you were talking about, then I could sleep at night, and
Because
I
you were
was
letting your creativeness have its voice. You weren't suppressing
exactly.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. And part of I write about this in the book too. There's millions of people with sleep
Yes.
disorders. And there's a lot of stuff going on energetically. So I get
Yeah.
that too. There's just
Yes.
a
Yes.
lot.
Oh no, that keeps me
Yeah.
busy at night. That's when they
Yeah, right.
download.
That's when yeah, exactly. And I would also submit to just consider that it could be also your soul knocking and saying, "Hey, come on, we came here to do this thing. It's time to get busy. Time
Yeah.
to take some steps towards it."
My brother is a professional writer. My mother was a wordmeister, but I had dyslexia, which I only found out later, and I had learning disabilities through being a sickly child and missing a lot of school. So, of course, when it came to actually physically writing, my writing was a scroll, and I'd get frustrated because the words would be in wrong order and kind of, give up. And then I got a computer at the age of 46, and I found my voice. And I
Wow.
could write an article, and of course, if it was not in the right order, I could correct it.
Wow.
And then I started becoming an article writer. And my brother has a magazine called hackwriters.com, and he started putting them on there, but he would correct it. And I said, look, go ahead and correct the spelling and the grammar, but don't lose my voice
Yeah.
because it's not your voice, it's mine. Then he
Right.
started noticing people responding to me. I don't get it, he says, because of course he taught literature and
Yeah.
script writing and everything else. And it's like, why are they going to her when it's not perfectly written? Right? But and then of course when I came into podcasting, which next week will be 11 years that I've been podcasting, 10 years in June of my own network, it now then transferred into the voice on the shows. Where
Mhm.
sometimes I just write a blog and speak that. Sometimes I speak and then write the blog on my own show.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it showed the freedom of not being restricted by you can't do that because you can't spell. Right? Or you can't do that because you haven't got a degree, or you can't do that because da 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 da. And
Right.
just going and doing it and discovering my own voice. Is it the voice for everybody? No,
Yeah.
right? But if you
Yeah.
get caught up on the grammar and the spelling, then you're not getting the message. So I'm not writing for you.
Yeah. I love that you're speaking, and you've noticed that a couple of times of voice, and
Mm.
getting our authentic voice is everything. I just last night I led a free writing circle, and one of the rules in free writing is that you just go. You don't stop the
Yes.
pen. You don't punctuation, grammar, spelling,
No,
nothing. If it's all
let it
gibberish,
out.
it's all gibberish. But you're letting it out. And one of the women afterwards said, maybe I should take a writing class.
Mhm.
And what she read was just zesty and full of life. And
Mm.
it was a little goofy and it was fabulous. And I thought, like, why why unlearn what you're
Yes.
like that's like
Yes.
sending the child who knows how to draw to art school to,
Yeah.
to draw this way as
I mean, you've
opposed
got
to
Grammarly, you've got spell check. If you
right,
need those
right,
things, fine. But I've just written my memoir, and I just wrote it. I didn't think I
yeah,
wrote. I just let the fingers type, and then I read
yeah,
it afterwards, and it actually revealed a lot to me because I
yeah,
wasn't dictating what I was writing. And
yeah,
when I read it back, you'd kind of, oh, I see a theme and a thread here. My
yeah,
brother, who I thought was going to dissect it to hell, started editing it, and really didn't tear it to pieces. Unfortunately, he had a heart
yeah.
attack and didn't finish it. I actually haven't finished my editing yet. I've got to get around to that. But I think if we just sort of allow ourselves to
Mhm.
be, as you say, be the magic, just let it out without worrying about what other people are going to think, what it reveals back to you is always quite astounding. I've read articles
Yeah,
I wrote 20 years ago, oh, that's an interesting article. Who wrote it? Me.
yeah. And I think one of the things we also do is just in our modern culture, we
Mm,
think, oh, bigger is better, and we have to reach this huge audience, and it's got to appeal
yes.
to all of these different. So we're actually compromising, I'd say,
Mm,
violating ourselves
I
to
agree.
please other,
Yes.
to please who we think
Stay,
might.
we don't want you to stay on a linear road, but we do want you to stay in your own vibration. You're
Exactly.
writing or speaking for the people that you're in your vibe, in your
Yeah.
frequency. And it's an invitation for
Mhm.
other people to rise up to that frequency to want to know more. But the moment
Exactly.
you try and go, I need to be one size that fits all, you are now dishonoring yourself and your own magic because you're diluting
Exactly.
it. And it's not going to
Right.
please everybody because you can't do that.
It's so true. And we all have this incredible magic inside of us that I think I think it's fair to say that we don't want to die without having that been lived. We
Yes.
don't want to get to the end and be like, wait a minute. And so, part of what I hope this book will do and my work will do is really help and encourage and support people to live their magic so that there's
While
no
they were
regrets at the
alive.
end. Yeah, I'll never forget my 88-year-old father the year before he died. He said, where did all the years go?
Uh-huh.
Like where did all the years go? And so, and I think we all kind of have like even me at my age, I said, gosh, where did the years go? But to when we're living our magic and our own gifts, there's a vibrancy to every day. We're not thinking, oh, I should have done this, or
Mm.
oh gosh, there's no time left, or we're just doing, we're engaged.
And
Yeah.
who knows what time you've got left. I mean, I lived a good period of my life where I flatlined. I just was not participate. I was in everybody else's life doing what they needed from me, but I'd flatlined in my own life. And it was that
Mm-hmm.
rediscovery of me, of who am I? What do I really
Mm-hmm.
want? Because I'd lost myself completely. But, the oldest person I've interviewed was 92, who took a new lover at 90, has her own TV show who just chutzpah, I mean, complete
Yeah.
energy. Many 80-year-olds who still, one of them wrote, she's 82, she wrote a poem every single day through COVID.
Mm.
All right, and
Mm.
she's out there playing music for seniors, she's dancing, she's just so vibrant. And I know what's happened to them in their lives. I know the losses that they've had,
Mm-hmm.
but they chose life is precious. I'm going to live it. I am actually alive. So I'm
Yeah.
going to live it. And I think so
Yeah.
many people are called the living dead because they may be robotically living, but they're dead because they're just taking that linear path and they're not connected to life.
Yeah, I had the great fortune of studying with Martin Fractel for many years, and he talks about grief and praise and how they're the same coin, different sides of the same coin. And we all have this. Some of us get more than others of this heartbreak and
Yeah.
grief and loss, and just like you're saying, flatlining. I've been there too. Where it's
Mhm.
I'm kind of this lost. Like, what am I doing on this planet? What did I
Who
come
am
here to
I?
do? Who am I? And
Yeah.
where is that voice
Yeah.
anyway? And how do I even get that back? So
Yeah.
I get it, and we have a choice in that point,
Hmm.
not to ignore the grief, to honor it, but then what are we going to do with it? Like, what are we going
Yes.
to do with it? Like, is it going to become our identity, or is it become like, can we can we make beauty out of it? Can we
Right.
make art and creativity and new life out of it?
It's the same with
Yeah,
victimization. Again, something happened to you. Are you going to say the victim of what happened to you? Or are you going to take what happened to you and in your own discovery, make it happen for you? Right.
exactly.
But that
Yeah,
is the choice we have to make. And the more that we stay in anger or revenge or pain, or anguish or victimization, the more we're actually giving up our own life.
right, right, right. And it's really managing our energy.
Mm,
Again, you know, absolutely. Like if we're in, all of us experience, it's a human condition to experience sadness or anger or just
yeah.
lethargy or, all
Yeah.
of that. And just to honor that. So if it's, half a day, couple of days, I mean, I'm not talking about big grief and trauma,
Right.
but if we're staying in that, I
Yes.
mean, there are so many ways that we can shift our energy. And that's what we're doing. We're actually managing our energy. We're creating new neural pathways in our brain
Hmm.
so that we're focusing on like, wow, this like look at this incredible day. Look at what I'm actually being offered. We part of this book started when I had sold my house without another in the middle of COVID. It was like, we got to make, I don't know, that was either like, major inspiration or major insanity. I don't know which one it was. I'm
Sometimes they're
still
one of the same.
still figuring that one out. But a series of events happened right after that. My mother died. A lot of long-term friendships kind of dissolved.
Mm,
My work was not robust at that moment. Our short-term housing fell through at a moment's notice. It was like all of this loss at
yes.
the same time. And so we ended up getting a camper van and traveling around and saying, where do we actually want to be? And it was then that I said, and I was very much in grief.
Mm,
And that was when I wasn't sleeping too. So like the
right.
combination was
Yeah.
pretty,
Hmm.
difficult. But I decided that my job was to see the magic and share the magic. And
Yes.
so as we were traveling around the country in this camper van, we were doing what was called boondocking. So we're staying in different farms and vineyards and people who were doing amazing things on the land. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's very near and dear to my heart. And some of
Mm,
these people, were like in their late 60s, early 70s, and like just starting a vineyard. I mean, so it was very like long haul creativity at any age.
yeah.
And I started writing and blogging about that really as a way to stay connected to my people. But I just became so inspired by what people were actually doing and sharing that forward. And other people have said, wow, that inspired me, or gosh, that's something I hadn't thought about that before. So I think, as
Mm,
long as we're seeing what's possible. And then after that kind of episode was done, we ended up moving back into the city, which I said I would never do, and looked and said, okay, my job now is to see the magic and the beauty everywhere and to
everywhere.
share it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when we see it, that's when we see that the world is constantly sending us signals and
Yeah.
guideposts towards our joy and nudging us and nudging us and nudging us. Then when we can open to this and get our downloads and get wisdom, right?
Hmm.
When wisdom and the ideas and things that come to us, then we can be the magic. And then, in my opinion, in my experience, then it's sharing it, which is magical, right? Like here,
Yeah.
you're doing your podcast, you're sharing this with everybody, you're connecting with all of us. We're sharing it with me. This is magic. I mean, this is the
Exactly.
magic of life.
And the inspiration of interviewing people like you who, you've gone around the roundabout, to discover that the joy and the happiness is a choice, and that happiness isn't just in playtime, that when you really enjoy what you're doing in your work, you're very
Yeah,
happy about it, and it does become play in many ways, right? So
yeah,
it
yeah,
is like if we choose to look at things not from a burden lens, but from the what joy do I get out of it? Now, if I get up in the morning, I can have, because I'm not a good sleeper, I can wake up and I've had very, very little sleep and, head for the coffee. And I've got two shows to do today. How am I going to do it? And I press play and I'm there because it always lights up my day. It always lights up my life. It always gives me that
yeah,
meaningful purpose to get somebody's wisdom and joy, skills, knowledge out to someone else who needs it
yeah,
on
exactly.
their journey of life. And I think when you find that that meaningful purpose, that joy and that happiness of what you're doing and why you're doing it, you do become the magic. You are living in the magic. And I think it's just finding that journey, right? That place where you go, this is it.
Yeah. And I like what you said too. It's like even in every moment. So even if you don't know what your purpose is, and I mean, I've been there. It sounds like maybe you've been there too, where it's like, well, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But I think, what I've experienced is that it's more important, as important then as ever, to really find something that that you can be joyful about. And I'm a big fan of being in nature. If just even an hour in nature can kind of shift the perspective, shift the thinking. You see a beautiful sunrise, a beautiful sunset. Even if you're in the toughest city, you could always look up and see
Yeah.
this incredible sunrise and sunset. So, or whatever it is that fills you up. So being in that, and also kind of being, it sounds a little unconventional, but just being in relationship to everything that we touch. Like we don't think about it, but like having a relationship with this, like this computer that I'm at,
Yes.
and saying, we take it for granted, it's just an inanimate object, but I'm like, wow, thank you, thank you. And that gratitude too for what we do have is just is a huge access. And I love the saying that, who do you like to give gifts to? Like people who are like, oh yeah, whatever, or like, oh my God, this is amazing. And when the world's constantly sending us gifts, are we saying like, oh yeah, whatever, oh, I'm too busy, or that's not really what I wanted, oh, that's definitely not what I wanted? Or did we say like, this is wow, thank you for this is amazing? We tend to get more and more.
It's kind of like universe. How did you know? The universe knows everything. I call that the knowingness. The knowingness is the channeling the wisdom from the universe, God, spirit, Gus, whatever you want to call it. But it resonates in your heart in truth. And it
Yeah,
goes into your spirit into action. And your mind will know what it needs to know, when it needs to know, to apply that wisdom into whatever productivity it needs to go into. I can't work from my head because if I do, I'm going to go round and round in circles and talk myself out of it. I
yeah.
have to listen to my wisdom. My soul, heart, and spirit have to be in sync, and then my head has got it together.
Exactly, leading with our hearts. And
Mm.
it reminds me of one of the vignettes I have in the book. And I'll just tell a brief snippet of it. I was walking in the woods near Boston, where I live. It's 7,000-acre preserve, and I was walking for about 2 hours, and I didn't see anybody. And it was wonderful. And then I thought I was heading back to the car. And I've never been lost. I've never taken a map. All of a sudden I was lost. And it's not deep wilderness, but I was, there's this big kind of gray cloud thunderstorm coming in. It was getting cold. The wind was playing tricks. I couldn't get a read. I couldn't get a read where the sun was. And I started to panic a little. And I said to myself, wait, I just said, which way do I go? Which way do I go to get home safely? And I kind of felt this tug to my left. And I was like, that doesn't feel right. But I remembered this friend who she would ask my advice and then like start to argue with me. And I'm like, well, okay, if I'm not going to listen to the advice, I probably shouldn't ask it. So I went left, and I kept thinking, this doesn't feel right. And within minutes, I hear these two women, and they're like talking loudly. One's like, get the map out. No, and what happened was, literally just when I asked for direction, they had taken a wrong turn. And here we were in the middle of 7,000 acres. And they were saying, where's your map? Why are you out here without a map? But I looked at their map, and it turns out the car was not left. It was just guiding me to those women
Right.
with the map so that I could get back to the car.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's, like it's very easy to say, oh, isn't that a nice coincidence? But when we actually kind of engage in it,
don't argue with it.
Exactly. Or also the trust.
Yes.
Like 7,000 acres. Like we all met in the middle of exactly when we needed, not before, not if I had run into them 15 minutes earlier, I wouldn't have known I needed a map, So I think just marveling at the miracles that is,
I remember being in London with my daughter and my nephew. and we had been wandering around London. We were deciding where to go, and we're on a corner. Are we going this way? Are we going that way? And then all of a sudden, a person crossed the road with her daughter, and it was my sister-in-law and her daughter. Her daughter's at university in Scotland, and my sister-in-law was from Hong Kong. And it was like, here they are at the same crossroads as us.
Right.
And it was just like a mind blow, and hi, how are you? And this and that, and off they
Yeah.
went. But London isn't small. And
Right.
what are the chances? And was it meant to be anything? No, I think it was just a reminder that really it doesn't matter how vast something is. Really, things are kind of quite small, and you bump into people that you're meant to bump into for whatever
Yeah.
reason, whether it's just for
Right.
the moment, or whether it's, to help you find your way home, or whether it's something bigger than that. But
Right.
we don't pay attention to that because we're so busy walking linear, blinkers on our thing. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going, but stop, center, take a breath, listen. The guidance will show you, but we're so busy. Bop, 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 we don't listen.
It's so true. And I think it can be hard once we're in that go-go state, even when our cognitive mind says, oh, I should stop for a moment, our bodies are almost have this own trajectory
Yes.
to it. And another one of the vignettes I write about is transition time. And it's
Mm,
something that I was in a yoga class, and I'd been doing yoga for 15 years. And, I felt pretty competent and confident. And then the teacher said, pay attention to the transitions in between the poses, because that's actually the real yoga. And I was like, what? I don't remember one transition in between these poses. I thought I'd had a really good class until now, but I started looking at that
mm,
and playing with that, because how we do anything is how we do everything, right?
yeah.
So it's like I would drive fast to yoga class where I could then be zen, like,
Yeah.
and or even like in between our appointments, between the supermarket and the next appointment, or the client meetings. And I've started instituting just having 3 to 5 minutes where I don't do anything. And it can be really hard, like when the day is so busy
Yeah.
and there's so much to do. I feel it's almost more stressful to initially sit, but within 2 minutes or so, my mind starts to settle. And sometimes I don't even, what I get is that that next thing that you were supposed to do,
Exactly.
reschedule it. No, this is the direction you're supposed to
I
go.
get
And life is just so much more fun. Like,
I get that all the time, especially when I know I have this on my plate and that on my plate. And believe me, this year I have a huge amount on my plate. And
mhm,
that for a while there, I was getting rather anxious. And a friend of mine who does sound healing, he kind of took me through it, and then realized I know where the anxiety is coming from. I'm looking at everything I need to do this year, and I've clumped it all together. It doesn't all have to be done right now.
right.
What is the thing I need to do right now?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when that's finished, what is the next thing? And, pace myself. It's what am I getting anxious about?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't all have to be done in this moment. It will be done when it needs to be done. But the other
Yeah.
thing that you're talking about, I'll look at, I have this to do and that to do. And then I suddenly go blank on what I meant to do. And I put on a piece of music and I go somewhere else altogether.
Yeah.
And then when I do come back to what I need to do, I'm clearer at what I am doing.
Yeah. And I love that you said that about the sound healing too, and the anxiety, because sometimes we just have ancestral patterns in us
Yeah.
that are anxiety making. That, I think of, my Eastern European ancestors fleeing and thinking, well, like, is that what's actually being activated in me? Because, what I'm doing now is not life and death,
Right.
like, no, but I'm not starving, I'm not, any of that. So is that what's happening? And sound healing, actually I've begun to engage in sound healing. I was a musician, not a professional musician, but I played piano and fiddle from a young child. And, you know, and just even playing the fiddle and having that vibration
Yes.
can really loosen up some of those blocks and those ancestral blocks. And just even being aware and saying, wait, is this my anxiety, or is this something else that maybe is not and maybe is ready to go? or is it collective anxiety? I mean, there's a lot of collective anxiety now. So
Exactly.
if you're open to that, like, is this mine or not? Yeah.
And I'm as an empath, somebody described it the other day because I suffer a lot from depression, and she said, but that is, um, she didn't use environmental depression, although it meant like the kind of the environment that we're in. Is suffering from depression. Can I can't remember the word now. Either conditioned, something that that's going on around us that's causing the
Mm-hmm.
depression. So that really, when I would get depressed, but why? What's changed
Yeah.
in my life that I'm depressed? And then
Mm-hmm.
it's really about what's going on around me that's causing the depression. It's not
Yeah.
me, it's what's going on around me. So how can I still be compassionate and contribute to the solution? Well, I can't do that from a depressive state.
Right.
Right. So I need to heal that depression so that I can step up into the higher vibration and send out that loving frequency of healing.
Yeah.
But it's just you mean normally you cannot rationalize depression. You know it get consuming, but kind of knowing that it isn't me, it's just what I am feeling from everything else going on around. It
Yeah.
helps. So you release yourself from it. And fine. And music for me is it. You know,
Yeah.
music is it's the frequency of music. The beautiful thing about it is it resets your body, resets your equilibrium. It
Mm-hmm.
rebalances you. And so, like that sound healing, and then you can come down into that center and let it go. Right.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's kind of I think awareness is something that we need to be aware of in our lives. And that very often we just, as you said, busy, do off this appointment and that appointment, but what about the journey getting there? And I think if we just lived in more awareness, um, like today, coming home, I went out for breakfast with friends. When coming home, I took a different street. And then suddenly, right,
Yeah.
oh, there's an African shop there. Ah, there's a Caribbean shop over there. Oh, there's another shop over there. And I hadn't paid attention to this before.
Right.
And it's suddenly you're aware of things and it becomes fun. It isn't just
Yeah.
mindlessly driving down the street.
Yeah, right. It's funny. I've written a big yet about that too, and it's called Interrupt the Pattern. And it's
Oh,
something I've been playing with for a very long time. And, just as you said, like if you're taking the same road to the supermarket, or maybe go to a different supermarket,
mhm.
because your brain is suddenly is firing on all cylinders, trying to just kind of orient us. And
Yeah.
it's and like same thing when people are traveling, our brains are just engaged, different parts of our brains are engaged in ways of trying to figure out where we are, and just
Hmm.
saying, oh, just in delight. Like delight is easier to access
Yes.
when we're interrupting the pattern. But it could even be just like try writing something with your opposite hand, with your non-dominant
Hmm.
hand. It could be anything. Try some different food, try a different restaurant,
Yeah.
just open yourself up to that, like whatever, and start to notice your patterns, that like what are the patterns um that we're not even aware of, right? Like, and we often do it out of comfort, but also out of convenience. Like, oh, it's
Yeah.
just easier. Oh, I'll just take this. But so it takes, I think for any change to happen, we have to have the desire to change, but also the willingness to make those changes. We have to be the willingness to kind of step out and say, okay, I'm going to spend an extra 5 minutes and do a different route, and then have consistency and reliability and a structure to help us do that. Otherwise, it can be very isolating
Well, we
and
don't
difficult.
realize how complacent and dull we've become. Right? And then we wonder why
Yeah,
we're not happy, we don't see joy. Well, you've dug
yeah,
yourself in a trench that you are going in every single day and you're not paying attention,
yeah.
and by switching things up, when I first started podcasting, somebody asked me after I wrote an article on depression, she actually asked me, I would love you to be a podcaster on my network. And I said, what's a podcaster? I didn't know. It was
Mhm.
live. I had no idea what I was doing. All the wrong buttons in the first show, completely. But the experience was, okay, well, it can only get better. And very
Yeah,
often it got worse.
yeah,
People I'm interviewing dropped, or this happened, or that happened. But you learn instead of panicking, you just learn to deal with it in the moment. And then you
yeah,
go, well, you know what? I didn't know I could do that.
yeah,
What else can I do that I didn't know I could do?
right.
And, be
And
more inquisitive.
yeah, and I love that you're talking about failure too,
Mm,
because we're so conditioned to avoid failure. And like I'm a perfectionist. So, as I even said, sometimes we just think we have to be more and more ready, or wait, am I ready for this? And I think I wrote that in the book too. I said, if I was following my own advice, I would just I would stop proofing this book and just get it out the door, because that's
yes,
better than having, getting it out the door is better than having this perfect book that just
right.
doesn't go anywhere. But there's a great quote. It's a Japanese quote, and I'm sure I won't get this exactly right, but there's something about the nobility of failure. And it's saying, wow, like, look at all the things that person failed at. They're really alive, because if we're not failing, we're not actually stretching
We're
ourselves,
not
and
learning. We're not
we're not
learning.
learning.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so reframing that, and actually that's helped me a lot to, as a perfectionist, because I would say, oh wow, I really bungled that. Well, at least I tried it. I'm really
Exactly.
alive.
I
Yeah.
like the terminology of someone who said fail forward, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
always moving forward. But for me, failure is when you give up, you stop trying.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it is either just redirects and lessons learned. Okay,
Yeah.
I've learned how not to do
Yeah.
it, right?
Right.
Or whom not to do it with, or
Yeah.
how not to approach it. So now
Yeah.
I'm going to try a different approach.
Yeah. And I think for people who really struggle with failure and engaging with failure, I think it's not can't emphasize enough the importance of being in community, whether you have a mentor or a coach, or
Yes,
you're just in a community, so that when you fail, you have someone to, you don't go into this
supportive.
isolation, because the
Yeah,
isolation is
yes.
also what leads to the depression and the shame of it. And it's like, oh, what am I doing?
The
And then you're in your
judgment,
head and
the
your judgment.
self-judgment, it's kind
Yeah.
of like, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden, you're the worst person in the world. And he's like, where the hell
Right.
did that come from?
Yeah. And nobody else cares.
No.
I remember, gosh, years ago, it was the first time I was interviewed for a newspaper article, and they kind of misquoted me. And I was like in this stand, like, oh, it's not what I said. And like, and till finally somebody turned to me and then said, Dan, who cares? Like,
Yes. And I think that's a huge lesson to learn. When you are actually rise up to a certain frequency within yourself, and you can actually look at yourself in the mirror and go, I like you, I admire
mm,
you, I value you, I love you, and I love what you stand for, then it really doesn't matter what other people's opinion is. If we're
yeah.
still chasing other people's opinion to validate us, we've never truly stepped into who we are and what we're here
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah, it's so true. And again, it's just pulling our energy back into us, and kind of circling back to something we were talking, stay in your own lane,
Yeah.
stay in your own lane. And I like to think of my energy sometimes just as like a magnet inside of me, and just like pulling all of my energy back into me. And sometimes I do it with, again, as a fellow empath, if I'm in a group of people, I find myself, my energy kind
Hmm.
of going outwards and outwards. And sometimes I'll just have to step back and be like, let's
I
pull
need
it
to
in.
recharge.
Yeah, let's just pull it in and
Yeah.
then engage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, it's like it's more community. I've created a community here with Self-Discovery Wisdom of people in their own way, but they've all made the journey. They've all made their own self-discovery of what they're here
Yeah.
for and what they're doing. And I just created a community where it's safe for them to share. And that when people come to listen, they know they're going to get people that really do care about whom they serve because
Right.
they've been willing to take the journey themselves. Now, the people are all at different levels, maybe entry
Right.
level, maybe further ahead, or maybe, way ahead. And you're going to
Right.
listen and learn from them according to where you're at. But
Yeah.
for me, it is less the lane, but more of the community. And that community, it builds out into wonderful different pockets. That's why there's different genres in their own
Yeah.
different pockets. But the common denominator is the good vibrations of goodwill towards each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Kindness and love are everything. And again, when I was at the kind of the end stages of writing this book, and I was getting my website up, and I was, tweaking that. And, sometimes like things just don't come together. It
I
just
know.
wasn't coming together. And I find for myself, I don't know, maybe other people do too, that, when I'm not particularly nice to other people, it's when I'm uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable with myself or with
Yes.
or I may be fearful of
Mhm.
something. And I think I was, fearful of like, wow, is this actually going to come? I'm working so hard. Why is this not coming together? And I was actually at an ashram, and somebody invited me, one of the swamis was going to be giving a speech. And, I thought if I went to this ashram and like really worked on stuff, I would get it done. It actually was the opposite. It just completely, and I went into the speech and I thought, oh God, I should be working. And I actually fell asleep. And I woke up just as he was saying, and actually before that, I was kind of like short with my publisher. She's wonderful. Like, we're actually very good friends. And I was getting kind of just annoyed. And what he said was, if there's not, doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter what you achieve, and I actually said, doesn't matter how many books you write. And I thought, wait, is he talking to me? He is talking to me. Without kindness and love, none of it matters.
Exactly.
Nothing matters.
If it
And it's
doesn't
been
come
my
from the
guidance.
heart, it's not going to have the
Yeah.
impact, right? It's got to come from the heart. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's good to recognize that sometimes we're fearful, or, we're fearful about something. And, then we get into this state of contraction, and it's a normal human feeling, but to really own it and say, okay, what do I need to do to be loving? Like, what do I need to do with this to transform it? It's coming here for a reason to transform. So how do I do that?
And that it's not looking for the loving on the outside, it's being the loving on the inside. The magic of you is your love generator, right? The soul is the guidance system, but your love generator, the more you love out, the more love that you spend out, the more your own generator regenerates. Right?
Yeah. And doing good deeds is just, I find, is one of the easiest access. Sometimes I do what's called my guerrilla good deeds, and it's just these anonymous good deeds or maybe it's not anonymous, but Lynn McTaggart talks about this in her Power of Eight work. And she says, just like, when you're intending and you're tending and you want something to happen for yourself and it's not happening, just get off yourself. Get off yourself and start intending for somebody else. Start sending them good intentions. And it's true, when we're paying it forward. Yeah, it totally resets you. It's like, how can I be of service? And even just asking that in the morning and saying, like, how can I be of service today? Show me how I can be of service today, like to myself, to others, to the world. Like, what's the best expression of my soul today?
Yeah.
And then it becomes,
But the thing is when you get up every morning and you want to do what you're doing, right? But there are those days, like as I said, I haven't finished the book yet, and because it's time, it's just me putting enough time aside, and got a new grandkid coming, and I'm rebranding, and I'm aligning with some other people on certain projects. It's just like everything has come at once, and the book it's there, ready to go, somewhat, just needs a little more editing. And I thought I could go back and change this and change that. And I thought, no, that book was written that way for a reason, right? If there's ever to be another book, it will be written a different way. To now go and change it and add this and take out and do this and do that means second guessing, third guessing, fourth guessing. And it was written in flow, and it was written in the way it was meant to be read, and then let it go. Right?
Let it go. Right. When it's time to birth. And there's also that whole piece of divine timing. Like, really, when does the book want to be born? We just, as a baby, the baby comes out when the baby comes out. We don't say, this is your birthday and this is when you will come out. But just letting it flow. And originally my book was supposed to be out in last September. And there was just a whole series of kind of just wrinkles that I didn't understand at the time, until I sat with it and thought, these are actually delays. I'm not supposed to be launching yet. I don't know why.
All for a reason. And sometimes we may never know the reason, but the universe does. Trust.
Exactly.
Trust.
Yeah. And also recognizing that it could be hard in those positions, right? Like, it's not always easy to get from, why is this happening, to like, oh my gosh, do I need to push it through?
Right.
And it's that discernment too of like, oh wait, is this something that I need to actually take more action on, or is it something that I just need to allow? And so
Well, you
I
kind of
even,
know if the contractions are there or not, whether you should be
yeah,
pushing it
yeah,
through, or if there's
right,
no
right,
contraction, stop pushing.
right. And just the discernment of that
Yeah.
wisdom, right?
But I think the big P word of patience, that's something I've had to learn.
Mhm,
I was given something over 5 years ago, and it was a plan for where I'm meant to take my business. And I've been taking it, I've become a plodder, which I never thought I would be, because I'm a person who's a visualer. I see things and I want to make it happen. And it was like,
mhm,
it will happen. But what you have to do is plant the seeds, speak
yeah,
to what you want to happen, put it out there, because I do, I put it all out there in a graphic. I tell the story of where it's going to go,
yeah,
and it will happen with whom it's meant to happen, when it's meant to happen. And I had to learn to back off and be patient, but be ready for
yeah,
when the alignments come together and be able to
right,
pivot then into where I'm meant to go. And
yeah,
that was a hard one to learn, because it's
yeah,
here. Why are you not making it happen? And it's like
right,
it
right.
is happening. It's rather like, I love this graphic of a carrot on the top. And
Mhm,
there's another one, the better one, where you see the tree growing, but you have no idea what the roots are doing underneath. And
yeah,
things grow in the dark. And things that we
yeah,
don't see are already growing, like the bamboo shoots. They can take 5 years to grow before you finally see them come up. And when they come up, they can come up in a matter of weeks to 200 feet. But
yeah,
all that
yeah,
grow from preparation. And this is the thing, I'm preparing. I'm preparing. And eventually, when the time is right, whoosh, that growth is going to be there. But we have
exactly.
to
And you're beauty.
surrender, don't we?
Exactly. And that could be, and I think too, sometimes we get stopped because we don't know how it's going to work out. So
Yeah.
I love what you're saying just about visualizing it and feeling it done. And what's this going to feel like? But I think a lot of times, I know in my life, even just I think writing the book, I mentioned that I was threatening to write it for a couple of years, and I didn't know how. And I
You had
think
to
for
let
a
go of
lot
the
of
perfectionism for a start and
First of all,
allow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also, and like, what is the how? But just
Yes.
like, all right, what's the next logical step? We'll sit down and write the book. That's the next logical
Yes.
step, right?
Just do it. Just do
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And so many of us get stopped because we don't know how it's going to play out, and we
Right.
don't know the long term. So like, just pull it
Yeah.
in. What's the first thing in your heart? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and we talk about those emotions before, we do have to spend them and not hold them, otherwise they manifest in a different way.
yeah,
And when we're writing something, we are sharing those emotions, but they
yeah,
are meant to be spent, not for you to stay on the anger chapter, because then nobody's want to go to the next chapter. You've already
yeah,
spent them, right? And it's to take
right.
people on that journey of that flow, because then when a book becomes relatable, you could be talking
Mhm.
about my journey, or I hadn't thought about it, or I hadn't looked at life that way. Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know this, I could do this. That's when the book is feeding people, right?
exactly.
And
Yeah.
the gift that you were given in order to write it, you had to surrender to the writing of it without dictating how you thought
Right.
it should go. In other words, you stop thinking, you start feeling, and you let the feeling write.
Exactly. Exactly. And you just get into that flow state. Well, I say you just get into that flow state.
Yeah.
But and some people would say, well, how do I get into that
Yes.
flow state? And I would say, like, if you want to write a book and you're like, oh, I don't know. Just say, I'm going to go write for 15 minutes. I'm going to go to my favorite coffee shop and I'm going to go write for 15 or go type or whatever for 15 minutes. Don't say, I'm going to write for 3 hours
Yeah.
today and get something. Just, and again, coming back to that play, let me just see what comes out of the pen and what wants to happen. I find a lot of times I think, all right, I'm just going to kind of, I'm stuck. Let me just sit down for 15 minutes. Well, just yesterday, I was writing an article and I was like, oh, I was in my mind thinking it's not really coming. Let me just sit down and see what comes out. Well, I ended up like completely blanking on a Zoom call that I was supposed to be on. She called and said, I'm like, oh my God, it's 2.5 hours later.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And
And
that's the best way when things that is the best way for it to happen. In all this rebranding, I have to rebrand the intro and the exit of the shows starting from the 4th of April. And
Mhm.
normally it takes me a while to find the right music, to saying the words and doing it again and again. I got it on second take of the audio. I found the right music, and within an hour I had it all done. And I
Yeah,
hadn't planned to
yeah,
do it.
yeah,
Right. And it
yeah.
just sometimes the flow is there and other times not. But um, when I was going to write my book, because I'm better just in the audio of letting things go rather even than the writing, I thought I'm going to audio this and then transcribe it. But I just
Mm,
sat down at the computer and I let the fingers go.
yeah.
And I did this in 10 days, I wrote 66,000 words.
Wow, it's amazing,
Yeah.
right? And then the questions for some people, I know for me too, is I was like, oh, well, sometimes it flows, but when it's not, then what do you do? And so, and again, this just happened a couple of weeks ago. Again, I was kind of under deadline for an article, and that was like I was getting anxious. I was getting anxious, like I was promised this, today by 1 o'clock, and it was 9 o'clock. It was 10 o'clock, and the more the deadline loomed, the more I was like, until finally I said, okay, this isn't working. And I grabbed my colored pencils and a sketch pad. I went down to the local coffee shop, took my computer with me, and even as I was sketching, I was thinking, this is really stupid. Why, like, this is not getting me any closer. But I was just having a good time too.
Yeah.
And then it was 20 minutes before I had to leave. And I said, and all of a sudden the article downloaded.
Yes.
And so it's like, and so many spiritual traditions advise us, like, walk away, like, just turn away,
Yes.
turn away. And it can be the
Because it's the
hardest
head
thing.
that's in the way.
Yeah,
The more we're in
exactly.
those thoughts of how it should be, what it should be, the deadline, going on in your head,
Yes,
the less
yes,
clarity you're going to have. All right. So
exactly.
redirect your mind into doing something else that brings you peace and joy and opens up those channels, and then sit back and allow.
Yeah. And then just be like delighted at actually what flows through you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's always mind blowing, actually, what comes through you.
It
You know,
is.
and you reread it or you re-listen to it or this or that, and you go, oh, because, when I'm
Yeah.
doing it, I'm not conscious of what I'm doing in the moment. I'm
Yes.
immersed in what I'm doing, but the brain isn't conscious because the
Yeah.
soul is writing, the soul and the
Exactly.
heart. And then when you listen or read to it afterwards, oh, it's like for the first time.
Yes, I know. It's delightful. Well, even in this writing circle that I was facilitating yesterday, we did a 10-minute prompt, and then one woman said, I don't even know what I
Yeah.
wrote. And I said, well, do you want to read it? And she read it, and it was this beautiful
Yes.
download of, we're all like,
Because
where
that's
did it come
the
from?
truth writing. When the heart and the
Yes.
soul are in sync and the spirit gets into action, it is the truth that is writing, not the
Yeah.
expectation, not the dictation, not writing for somebody else's approval. It is the
Yeah.
purity and the clarity that is writing.
Yes. And I think that, there's so many people who are channeling now and
Mm,
who are wonderful, and
yes.
it's great to get that wisdom. But I think it's really important for people listening to know you've got that wisdom too. You've got that ability to get that kind of download, that kind of wisdom, that guidance. It's not necessarily just coming from somebody else. So it's
Right.
interesting, and nobody gets 100%. So when we hear people, and we can tell too when what they're channeling is true, and
Yeah.
it rings true. It rings true in us. But I also think it's important to just a presence, to not just listen outward for that
Yeah.
kind of guidance, but really cultivate it yourself. Like, really, you've got the intuition, you've got that. It's a
It's there.
skill, it's an art, and
Yes.
it's a muscle. It's no different than going to the gym and getting your body in shape. Just practice your intuition, value it, trust it, and play with it. Invite it in.
Well, I mean, for me, that is utterly who Sarah is. And
Mm,
anything that Sarah gets confused about or is in doubt about or in fear about is what I call the humanoid side of me. And that I have to hand the driving over to my spirit side, my soul
yeah,
side, if
yeah,
I want to be truthful and honest to what I'm needing to do. Because if
right,
the mind takes over without the soul's guidance, then I know I'm going to go wrong.
right, right. Or it's just going to take a lot longer, or it's just
Yes.
going to be a lot
And a
harder.
lot more frustration.
Yeah,
And
right.
why give yourself the grief? Seriously,
Exactly.
there's such an
Exactly.
easy, when we get out of this, and again, I've had it with the podcast, and I'm sure you had the advice with writing the book. Now, if you do it this way, now you've got to do it that way. Now, people aren't going to pay attention if you don't do that. Well, that is all of their ways.
Yeah.
You've got to be true to what is your way, because
Right.
that's the reason why you were given the gift you were given, because it had to be your truth, your voice,
Exactly. Yeah.
not somebody
And
else's.
exactly. And trust is key when all the other voices are saying the opposite. I mean, it can be hard. I mean, just presencing for people, that can be hard to pull into yourself. And I would say step away, step away for a little bit, do whatever, meditate. If you sit and meditate, great. If you, whatever it is, a walk in nature,
Yes.
whatever it is that takes you into yourself, and just like sit with that. Is that really what my soul wants? Ask your soul, what do you want? What do you want?
When the
Yeah.
core lights up, when the core says yes, then you know you're
Yeah.
on the right track.
Yeah. When it's that, like, yes, like you just
Hmm.
know it in your bones. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great feeling. Trust it. Now you
Yeah.
create magic together with your courses. You have the forest therapy guiding, the creative mentoring, and the writing programs. So if somebody is interested in that, how do they connect with you on that? And kind of, tell us a little bit more about it.
Sure. So I'd love to connect with anybody who this is resonating with. And my website is dianepienta.com, DianePienta.com.
Can you spell the
My
Diane too? Because there's many different ways of spelling it.
Sure, DianePienta.com. And there's a little bit more information about the book on my website as well. But part of what I do is weave nature and positive psychology and these kind of concepts all together, and with writing too. Sometimes they're all woven together.
Hmm.
But I'm a real I've experienced over and over the healing power of nature.
Yes.
And we are nature. We are not,
Hmm.
we're not separate from it. So when we separate ourselves too much, we can have this feeling of disconnection and just not a feeling of belonging. And there's a big pandemic of that. People
Oh God.
really are not feeling belonging or
Yeah.
connectedness. And hands down, every time I lead a group, people just tell me they feel just peaceful. They feel connected. And it's connected to yourself, connected to each other. It's a way of being in nature. And you could say, oh, I can go for a walk in the woods, and absolutely you can. But doing a forest therapy guided walk with a guide is a way to get in a very embodied way and to really experience it with all of your senses, and to be kind of in this what we call the liminal state, where you're not really in your thinking mind,
Yeah.
but you're not in a trance either, but you're just
Mm.
in this
You're
very
present.
open. Yeah, you're so present.
Yeah.
And that's when the wisdom can come in. And
Hmm.
doing it community is also really powerful. And my work with as a coach, I particularly enjoy people who are in transition. A lot of time when you're in transition, you think you have to figure it out. It's so much easier. I know for myself, having a coach was just huge in helping me make leaps forward and helping me to identify what is it that I'm here to do, and just even helping to give me permission to play, or if there's a creative project that wants to take flight. And writing programs as well, doing free writing workshops. I love to do art and creativity and writing and all of this in nature. So sometimes all these are woven together. But I'd love to hear from folks. Yeah.
And that, the thing is, simplicity is the key. It isn't about complexity things. It is about connection. It is
Yeah.
about the relationship that you have with things. And the more that we're willing to immerse ourselves into it, the more we're going to get out of life. With people, well, how do I
Right.
find the magic? How do I find the love? How do I find the spirit? Well, it's there in you. It's just waiting to be activated. And
Yeah.
the activation can be found in nature, can be found in the writing, can be found in the dance. It's about interaction. It's about participation. And
Yeah.
people have got to the stage where they think, well, where do I download it? Amazon
Right.
and an app. And no, you've got to participate in it and become it.
Yeah.
Become it. That's the important thing. And
Yeah.
there is a technique to that, isn't there? And a
There
lot of
is.
it is just showing people the awareness, the
Exactly.
awareness.
One of the games I like to play is to say, for a week, just say yes. When you get
Hmm.
an invitation, when you'll be like, oh no, just say yes. I mean, it's just a game, right? You might show up and hate it, and you might show up and say, wow, wow, like I actually really like this. Just play, just open yourself up to saying yes to participation in life. And
And it's cool.
it is
It's
cool.
cool.
It is
Yes,
cool.
because
Yeah.
you are opening up to possibilities, right?
Yeah.
That's the important thing,
Yeah.
is opening up to possibilities. And if we don't open up to those possibilities, how can the opportunities happen to us?
It's so true. When I first moved to the neighborhood that I'm in now, it was this cold, dark January, and there was a neighborhood meeting that was happening on Zoom, and I thought, no, not one more. It's the middle of pandemic. It was like another Zoom call, and I was invited to attend, and I thought I'd just broken my ankle. I thought I'm not gonna go. And then I had this quote written down: "Life is a function of participation," and it kind of like shot out at me. So I said, okay, I'm going to sign on for 10 minutes. I'll say hello, tell them that I have a broken ankle, and get off. Well, 90 minutes later, I suddenly met all of my neighbors. Were organizing a garden, day. I mean, it was just, and one of my best friends now is now as a result of that connection. So you
Yep.
just never know where it's going to lead.
Yeah, and it's, there's some things you have to say no to because it's just, it's either not the right fit, or it's just not the right time, because somebody wants something from you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's a
yeah,
different type of thing. It's okay to say no. But if it's just that I can't be bothered,
right,
uh, then you will pay a high price for what you're missing out on,
right.
which is really, important. So, of course, the people can get your book from Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and they can also get it from, let's see, I've got it up here. Where is it? Uh, Bookshop, Book Deposit UK, Book a Million. So it could be found all of those places, and it's a great way for people to start. And then once they've read it, or they feel they now want to open up and take the journey of their own self-discovery with you, they can reach out to Diane Pienta at hotmail.com. And you do have a social media coming, but you don't have it at the present
I
moment.
don't have it now. And my website actually will take you to my email, which is Diane. I think you have a different one, Sarah. It's
Oh,
Diane
okay.
at dianepienta.com, but either will get their way to me, and I'd welcome any contact. I'd love to talk to you more. Thanks.
Yeah. The thing is, we're not meant to do it alone. The journey of putting one foot in front of the other, connecting with the earth, connecting with the spirit and the universe is your journey. But
Right.
people have skills and tools that can help you on that journey. And they're there to cheer you on because they want you to succeed, because they know that your success is everyone's success. So you're taking this journey not for you, but for everyone. Because the more you rise up, the more the frequency of the planet rises up, the more we step into love and peace. And it's up to each and every one of us to be willing to take that journey.
Mm.
Be the magic, right?
Be the magic. Yeah. And it is absolutely stepping into it. And I love what you said about we're not here to do it alone.
Mhm.
It's the I love the quote that geese fly 70% further and faster when they're in formation than when they fly alone. And we're the
Yeah.
same way. When it's the old paradigm of like, oh, I've got to do this individual, it's like it's got to be me. We're in a new paradigm of collaboration, of cooperation, of partnership. Life is more fun that way, but it's also sometimes we just need to shift our own
Yeah.
brains to say, okay, I can ask for help. B, it is more fun in community.
Yeah.
See, there's people, a lot of the wisdom that I share in my book, I say to people, a lot of this. It's a
Yes.
reminder, but we all need reminders.
Yes.
Sometimes I will go, a day I'll be like, I need to find something in my book. And one of the ways it's written is that there's 75 vignettes, and they're relatively short. So you can almost use it like a tarot deck and just open it
Yes,
and
I
say,
love
what's the
that.
wisdom that
What
I
do I
need
need to
today?
know today?
Today. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's what I need to know.
Yeah.
Yes, I need to
And
know
it's
that life is a function of
always
participation.
right on, right?
Always right on.
Yeah.
Or, just the other day, I got transition time. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm moving too fast. I got to slow down.
Yeah.
So,
And you know what? The old tortoise and the hare. The hare got cocky and took a nap. The tortoise got there but
yeah,
also took in the view along the way and
yeah,
probably made friends along the way. Right. And you're
exactly.
saying about, well, I think one of the reasons I do what I'm doing here is that when I started 22 years ago on this journey of self-discovery and redirection in my life, there was very little support around, and we didn't have the
Mm,
internet, we didn't have social media. It was very much what was in your community. I was very much a different type of person in who I was and what I was
mhm.
learning and sharing. With the gift of the internet, with the gift of podcasts, we now get to hear these journeys, this wisdom, these skills, and these tools, and we have no excuse. It doesn't matter whom you're choosing, but you do not need to do it alone. There are other people that are so happy to help you on that journey. And yes, we do need you to take that journey, but this is the gift of the times. Yeah, we
It
have
is,
negative aspects of it, but let's look to the positive because this is the gift of the times. There is somebody
yes.
out there for you.
I think that's so true. And I love what you said about that. When I started my journey 25 years ago, not only was the connection in the community just not as
Yeah.
robust, but or even because sometimes not even as existent, but there was also this idea that like this is woo stuff. This
Yes.
is like, oh, you're one of those woo people, and I was always living kind of this like dual life of business person by
Yeah,
day and woo person by
I
night.
know. Yeah.
But what was considered kind of out there has become very conventional, and
It's become
so
very
we just
mainstream.
mainstream,
Yeah.
and we're very, so there's all of these resources and reminders, and just for people to know they're not alone, I think
Yeah.
is really key. Like
Yeah.
you're not alone, and there's all kinds of resources, you know courses to help you with if your creativity, year long, where you can be in community, and also that's one of the reasons I got really started on my book. I was in part of is a course called Wisdom for the Arts, and it was all about how art is the access to
Mm.
divinity and to our divinity. And when you're in a community for it was 9 months, and you have the same people supporting you, that's powerful. Like
Yes.
that, you can't compare that to sitting alone in your
Mhm.
in your office or your desk. Just having that kind of support and community
And
is
it
what
will
I got.
blow you away that people are not competing with you,
Yeah.
right? People genuinely want to see you succeed, even if you are
Yes.
in the same line of work as them, because they understand
Yes.
we're all part of the orchestra, but
Right.
we're all different instruments. We can play solo and play very well, but when we come together as an orchestra and harmonically play together, the strength of that
Yes.
orchestra and its message,
Yeah.
it transcends anything we can do on our own.
Yes. And I love that analogy too, because whoever is listening, you're part of the
You
orchestra.
are.
And without you playing your part, the orchestra is not complete. It's just
Exactly.
not, there's something missing. We don't
Yeah.
quite know what it is, but there's
Yeah.
something
It could be
missing.
just simply the triangle, but we need,
Yes,
yeah.
right,
Everything has a
exactly,
reason.
right.
Everything. Yeah. Well, this has
Exactly.
been great. Thank you so much for sharing here today.
Oh,
And
Sarah, thank you so much for having me. I really
oh,
appreciate it. This was
my
great. Yeah,
pleasure. And
you're a,
and for people to understand that happiness and joy is a choice. It is an action. It is a mindset. It is a perception. And that get out of your head, trust your heart and soul, trust the downloading,
yeah,
but be interactive with life.
yes,
Participate in your own life because the magic is all around us. And when we
right,
realize it's all around us, in every single thing around us, we also realize it's also us. And we are
yes.
also part of that magic.
Exactly. And that magic is wanting you and supporting you
Yeah.
for you to live your magic so that you don't come to the end of your day or month or week and say, God, what did I, what
Yeah.
did I do? Did I live it? Like, live it. Yeah.
Yeah. Diane Pienta, DianePienta.com. Reach out. Look what else she's got there. The book, Be the Magic, can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and many other platforms. Give yourself the gift of the book. Give other people the gift of the book. Remember, I'm always pushing podcast parties where you read the book or you listen to the show and then you get together and have a conversation and share what each one of you got out of it. And that just expands the magic even more. And don't forget to share how the show or what what we did for you as well. We love to hear your comments. So thank you so much, Diane, for taking your journey and not being in your head, but just allowing, spreading your wings and following your path.
Thank you, Sarah. You're such a bright light. I'm so honored to be here with you. Thank you.
My pleasure to have you here. Until next time, folks, remember, you are the magic. All you have to do is ignite yourself. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. Find all of our shows on selfdiscoverymedia.com under podcasts or selfdiscoverymedia/shows. And for all our current shows, go to What's New. We are supported by you, the audience. You'll see a nice big shiny blue button for one-time donations or follow us on Patreon and you will be able to support us there. We enjoy bringing you such wisdom. And the next show will be up in just a moment.